the #1 radio station located on Fort Berthold, 91.3 FM, KMHA Newtown.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chairman Fox, live on the radio station, KMHA, our own radio station here amongst the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. So here to do an update. I hadn't had a chance to do one for a few weeks now. Part of the reason why is that, one of the main reasons why is just recently we got pretty busy last week, at the end of last week, and we decided to postpone it to today. Had meetings yesterday as well in Bismarck. And so we are able to try to do our updates today and share information as well. And then prior to that, for the first time in nearly 6 years, I scheduled and went on a vacation the last part of July, heading into early August, and took a trip in a camper and did some little bit of traveling and camping, and did our best to maintain social distancing, and didn't have to stay at hotels or anything else and things of that nature, and wore a mask everywhere we went. And I will tell you that in that trip that some states do a decent job of wearing masks and some do a terrible job, and see in certain a state or two where they did not wear hardly any masks, but of course we did. So again, before we move forward with announcements and bring you updates on things that are happening, both with COVID-19 and the tribe in general, I want to extend my prayers out to all the families, in particular our condolences and sympathies to the families in a significant amount of deaths that have occurred this last few weeks. I was able to attend a few of the funerals, but not all of them, and I apologize. Sometimes circumstances don't allow me to pay the respects that I want to each and every family that goes through this difficult time. But my prayers are there, and I ask everybody else to continue to say your prayers as well for the people that are suffering, people from their losses in their family and the loved ones that have gone on, to those that are suffering maybe from illnesses, or they're suffering from addiction, or they're suffering, the children are suffering from circumstances and their family and their homes. Keep praying for everybody. You got to remember that prayer is very important out there, in addition to those that usually do a lot of praying for all of us, that others do take the time to do the same. It's very important. It's to God in prayer that we're going to make it through not only this pandemic, but as a nation and a people keep moving forward. So we have a lot of things, information to update you on. I'll try to make this about 20, 25 minutes at the most for my broadcast here, but there is some information to share here. First and foremost, on a national level, as I typically do, what are the updates relative to the pandemic, the COVID-19 impact to the United States? So in the United States itself here, we have just quick numbers, well over 5 million total cases in the United States of America. Just recent new cases, and we're talking in a matter of a day or so, of 40,000 plus new cases in the United States. The COVID-19, obviously, in the United States is on the upswing in many regards because of policies, lack of policies regarding mitigation, but also policies about opening up, and quite frankly, individuals and peoples, depending on what area of the country you're talking about, or even amongst our local area, certain people, don't believe that, there's a negative impact, and they choose not to use masks or utilize mitigation or PPE and things of that nature. So, that the result is there's been an increase in cases. And in the United States, that is equated to more than 162,000 deaths so far. In the United States, I have no doubt before, the vaccine takes effect and before we get what's called herd immunity. Those numbers, we could see 200 to 300,000 deaths in the United States before those numbers dramatically go down with advances in medicine and things that we're racing forward to try to get. So that is what is occurring on a national level, and I encourage everybody, if you go somewhere, whether it's Bismarck, North Dakota, or you go to Minneapolis or Denver, wherever you choose to go, make sure that you wear your mask. Make sure you don't, look around you and say, well, nobody else is, I better not. That's all right. Just wear the mask and follow this protection. And remember, we're doing it for a lot of other people. So on a state level, a lot of numbers have changed, have come up. I'm going off of a release by the governor's office, updates and things that were provided. Earlier in the day, yesterday, the North Department of Health reported 117 new cases of COVID-19 in the state, a significant number. Now we're getting really close to about 1,200 known infections in the state, is what I'm seeing for numbers. And that's marking the highest point of the pandemic since, March, when the state got its first cases. And this continuous rise in active cases last month has not subsided as parts of the state, are getting ready to go back to school and most of the state. And so I'm going to address that in just a minute or two. But we have those that are beginning to continue to rise. And so my take on all this as the chairman is that the COVID-19 is even more so dangerous from the aspect of it's more prevalent out there. It is more positive COVID-19 cases that a person would be exposing themselves to. So there's a need to be more careful. At the same time, a lot of us have learned that you can still protect yourself. You can still go about normal business. You can go to the store. You can go shopping. You can interact. You can go visit offices. You can do things. But wear the mask. Wear the mask. Use the hand sanitizer. Wear that mask as much as you can. And that's really what makes the difference to many. And so in the state, there's department says that there's been 113 deaths from COVID-19. A large number of those in the Fargo and West Fargo, Cass County area. 67 of them long-term facilities, elders in long-term facilities, that nature. But really a really startling number is that 30 of the recent new cases, 117, came from the Bismarck area. So, the state's hot spot last month was in Burleigh County with 294 active cases. In Morton County is 115. So you combine that together, that's more than 400 active cases in the Bismarck-Mandan area. And it's something that we have to be very careful. That Bismarck is somewhere that many of us travel to or have relatives or family members go back and forth. So we got to wear those masks. We've got to, indoors in particular. Outside, we all have learned another lesson, that if you keep social distancing and you're outside and you're enjoying yourself out there, the risks are very minimal about catching COVID-19. But when you go indoors into public places, that creates a whole different situation. The risk is high, and obviously people are getting sick, whether symptomatic or asymptomatic, and are getting tested, and there is a growing increase. So as I said, that approaching 1,200 pretty soon here. So there's about 48 hospitalizations, up one from Sunday, now in the state. And of the test results that came back on Monday, there was about 4,600 tests. A little under 3% of those came back positive. But what has to be understood is that 6% of those that were tested for the first time testing, 6%, nearly more than double of those that tested came back as positive. And so that means that perhaps some people didn't have a chance to test, or some people didn't take it serious and they figured they better get a test. And then that's what's happening, you know. So you get 1,000 people that go by, you know, they're getting 50, 60 people that are testing positive, which is good from the fact that we get testing, we get data, people go home, they isolate, hopefully, they don't expose it to others, we start controlling the spread. And that's the whole key for testing, so we understand that, and people understand what's going on in that as well, too. So those are some of the numbers. Also, what came out in the state just recently, actually yesterday, and some of you may be a little bit startled by it and have a lot of serious questions, but an announcement was made about, North Dakota going to be a part of a pilot project in COVID-19 vaccine planning. And it's described as the state's going to create a logistical plan for distributing a hypothetical vaccine to residents. And it goes on to explain and says the federal agencies chose North Dakota for the program in part because they're interested in forming plans for vaccine distribution on Native American reservation, of which the state has 5. The program is solely intended to figure out the logistics of distributing a vaccine if one becomes available, and does not involve clinical trials on any willing or unwilling subjects, which is good news to hear, because quite frankly, our government has not been formally approached to participate or to authorize and approve of this. So it's something new to us as well. We're going to have to sit down with state officials, sit down with the governor, and exactly understand what they're trying to accomplish in this process. By what I'm reading, they simply it's going to be hypothetical. They want to understand if we do this hypothetical distribution, how can we improve that when we eventually get the vaccine and be able to move forward. You can be quite certain that the tribal government in all its effect and power is not going to make our membership part of a clinical trial to see if a vaccine works or not. Any vaccines that are going to be developed that need to be FDA approved and properly authorized by the federal government before any of our members are going to be, required to take that, or we're not going to be guinea pigs, plain and simple. And so we're going to make sure that we fully understand exactly what they're talking about. And so, put your minds at ease. This is something that would have to be approved by our government, and we certainly are going to look stringently at that to make sure that there's no risk or harm of that. We want a vaccine, we want it properly approved, and we want it here as fast as it can get here, but only when it's properly approved and we know it's effective. And so we're waiting for that like the rest of the world is, and that's the only way that we would allow a massive vaccination program to take place here at Fort Berthold. And so I want to give people those assurances as well. Now, back to mitigation policy, use of face masks. We all recognize, I see that more. You have some primary businesses like Menards, Walmart trying to head that direction. I've seen other stores, be it in Minot or Bismarck or where I have been to, which they are on their own initiative saying, you come in here, you got to have a mask on. Some hardware stores, things of that nature. And that's a good thing. I still am disappointed in the state. I think that the governor should take the initiative to protect our people more, to say, you go indoors to a public place, you must wear a mask. He has not made that decision, nor has the state in general. But I'm happy to announce this, and I'm glad that through our executive meeting that we had with our own council last week, we made a decision to adopt a mitigation policy of requiring face masks inside public buildings, when you're indoors. But we have yet to try to iron out and review this by council at the council meeting. We're going to have to figure out how to implement a fine and punishment for those that don't comply. Businesses that don't adhere to the policy. So we have to work out the legal and logistical things that need to occur. But in general, the policy has been approved. And so when we iron those items out, for enforcement and to make sure that it's effective in what we're trying to accomplish here, then we're going to move forward. And I hope no later by the end of this month, we will have it in full effect. And we want the businesses, and just like our tribal building, we don't have to do anything here. We've already been doing that. Since the pandemic began, we have required masks inside our tribal building. And all tribal property indoors still are required to wear masks. And so that's what we're requiring. The casino itself, moving towards that direction, all staff has to have masks. We've also asked the management to implement a policy of requiring patronage to do the same as well. So we're doing what we need to do to try to keep the numbers low, to keep the virus from spreading. And that's really important in light of the fact that we're coming up on school. But we have passed that policy, and it's a matter of taking some more steps to outline the policy, to that we're all clear and concise, and we get notice out to the public, give them an opportunity to adjust quickly, and then we will go ahead and institute that. And I'm hoping that the state itself will follow that policy. I'm hoping that the governor himself will step up and say, this is what we need to do. Other states have done it. Other cities have done this. They say indoors, you got to wear a mask regardless. But our state is one that has refused to do that, and I'm hoping that we keep pushing on it and lobbying that they will see the light of day and say, this is what it takes to keep the virus from spreading, and we're going to work very hard towards that effect. Now, as I mentioned, we're coming up on school. That's one of the priorities that we've been working really hard on for about a month now, getting ready and anticipating when school's going to open up. And so I'm very happy to announce, due to bringing together school board representatives, bringing together the superintendents, the leadership in the schools. We brought our own tribal education directors and analysts, and we've had a number of meetings. We're probably going to meet again, if not the end of this week, then early next week, just as they get ready to kick off the new revised program. And what I'm happy to announce is although one school in particular, or two really, that wanted to do physical presence, by majority, with the exception of Twin Buttes because they're very small, all the schools have agreed to initiate their school year, begin their school year with distance learning. And so they're going to go ahead and the reason why, the justification behind that, even though other schools, large schools in Bismarck and Fargo, Dickinson, wherever, Minot, are going to be opening up physically with their mitigation policies in place of physical presence, we have decided amongst the schools at Fort Berthold that it is wiser to watch and see what happens to those schools. And as it relates to data that we will see in the state, uptick of cases, positive cases, uptick of possible uptick of hospitalizations, and unfortunately a possible uptick of death in cases of that nature. And so we want to not rush into the school year. We want to be able to observe for 3-4 weeks and see how the other children in schools are faring. We got to remember that our children in our homes and our schools are situated a little bit differently as well. We got to remember that a lot of our children are living in homes with grandparents, great-grandparents in some cases, people that are more susceptible to COVID-19. And so if we leap into a school year physically, a lot of these children, and there's a rapid spread that we didn't anticipate, and they bring it back home to our vulnerable elders and grandparents and great-grandparents, we're going to see, that impact. And so we prefer to stand back and say, protect our vulnerable population, but see what happens on a state level. See how the data either moves or doesn't move one way or another. We think when it comes to our children, that is more important, to be more cautious when it comes to protecting our children and our elders and people at home. And so that's what we have convinced the majority of schools to do is to go into distance learning first, let the rest of the state rush forward, and then we'll watch and observe what's going on. And I want to thank and I appreciate all the schools for working so hard to come up with their policies and their procedures to get ready to renew and restart school again, because these children, we have to educate our kids. Education is very important. We can't hide from this disease. We just got to be smart on how we start up again. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. And so I'm happy about that. Some of the schools are going to forego some of the sports, and some of the schools are going to attempt to have their sports, sign waivers and limit things that they can. But that's a discretion made by the local school districts about all their children will participate in that as well. So a good thing of that is if we're distance learning, then if they're exposed by, interaction of sports, well, the next day they won't, bring that into a school setting because everybody's going to be at home. The non-athletes or the non-team members are going to be at home, social distance learning. And so that's what we plan to put forward. Again, all that hard work of school officials, our own educators, education specialists are working on that, and I'm very happy. There's an important thing I want to share as well to the public in general, though, when it comes to COVID-19. I have been watching and reading for the last week or so. We started observing this a couple months ago when they talked about what's known as Kawasaki disease. But what is occurring right now is a rapid increase of what they're calling MISC or MIS-C, and stands for multi-inflammatory syndrome in children, MISC. And the number of cases is approaching 1,000, 700 and some plus. A frequent amount of hospitalizations, and there is a correlation that is showing that most of the children that are being hospitalized, and unfortunately 10 children, it's more, 10, 15 children have died from what is called MISC. And it's primarily in ages 2 to 15, but the area that is requiring the most hospitalization and the fastest rapid spread is between 6 and 9. And that ages 6 to 9. So we're going to keep a close eye on this. The schools will need to keep a close eye on this. And instead of jumping into school year next week or the week after that, we're going to be cautious. We're going to see if that starts to spread. There's no known cases, tested cases right now of MISC in Montana, and there's no, as I understand, no cases yet of MISC in North Dakota. But there is a significant number in Minnesota. Minnesota's got a large growing number of infected cases, and they're tying it back to children that once had COVID-19, and it's starting to occur 2 to 4 weeks after they were positive, and they're ending up going to hospitals. And so these are things that we need to all understand. I know there are a lot of people out there that say, that wave off COVID-19 and say, it's nothing, and, just get a little sick, I don't get hardly anything. It's the impact to others, the spread of this disease and impact to others. You might be fine, but we have elders, we have vulnerable population, people with underlying conditions, and now potentially a spread to children. And that is impacting them. These are things that we can't take lightly. We have to stay the course. We have to continue our mitigation, continue to try to be data-driven and watch, be more cautious and careful. At some point in time, we will get through this pandemic. We will get to a point where we have a vaccine, people will have recovered, the disease will begin to lower its impact, and we will find that day. But right now, we can't afford to let up our guard because we're frustrated with how our lives have changed. There are too many people that are depending on us to not just simply throw caution to the wind. We've got to remember that we're protecting other people. As our signs say, we're protecting all other people beyond ourselves, and we think that's important. Here at MHA, Fort Berthold Indian Reservation, we believe that's important, and we're going to continue to do that. Federal assistance, another topic item. We are still severely underfunded, dramatically impacted. We're lobbying hard every day, advocating that some way, somehow, we reached out to both of our senators, our congressmen. We've reached out to the White House. We've reached out to everybody that will listen to say, look, energy tribes, and we're talking about less than a dozen, about 10 tribes, tremendously. And the amount of federal funding that they have given to us since the pandemic took effect, so since late April, May, the amount of revenue of funding given to us doesn't even equate to 40% of the losses that we've suffered. So what does that mean? That means that all the typical things that we provide to our people, the services we provide, our operations, everything we do as a government, all the programs we have out there, we're doing that with a significant less amount of funding that we get through energy taxes and energy royalties and revenue. And so if the federal government doesn't come in and help us offset those losses, we are now putting our finances in jeopardy. Now, thankfully, we're able to keep the lights on, pay payroll, provide services, give wake fund money, help out with people that are in need. We continue our programs. But everybody needs to understand that at least we're one of the tribes that the federal government has left out in the cold. They have not created a federal fund that will help compensate for losses caused by a pandemic that we didn't cause. And that's really concerning. We didn't cause this pandemic. We had no role in it coming to America and spreading throughout the United States and into Indian country, and then impacting our energy program and the royalties we depend on, the revenue we depend on to run our programs and do the things that we do. And all the various programs. So we've been lobbying hard. There is a major fourth round, as you can watch on TV, between Democrats and Republicans, whether it's $1 trillion or $3 trillion. They are going back and forth, but we're kind of getting caught in the middle of this thing with big energy where they don't want to finance, but we're trying to get them to understand, them being the United States government, senators, congressmen, we're trying to get them to understand that when it comes to tribes, we're not big oil. We're simply suffering losses to what is called a trust asset. Oil and gas is a trust asset that we have taken the market and we use to try to make a difference for our people and our nation. We don't go and like big oil and develop plays throughout the world. That's what they do. The Exxons of the world or whoever. We are different. We have a trust asset that we have, sometimes with reluctance and sometimes with great trial and travail, have decided to utilize to try to better our lives. And that's what we do with oil and gas. And the majority of that going to individuals, going to individual families. And so making a difference, having a better home, having a better car, buying clothes for their kids, providing things that they maybe couldn't have before. So it's a choice that our nation has made, our membership has made, to participate in the sale of its trust resources. And albeit we're trying to make sure that that process is responsibly maintained and that we don't impact the environment as best we can and things of that nature. But that revenue now has been impacted. The demand is down, and then the price of the barrel went down, negative $40 at one point in April. All these things that we're trying to build back out of. We're hovering around $42, $43 now. We're getting back to closer to where we were, but we're not there. So hang in there, say your prayers. We're going to continue to do everything to be fiscally responsible, to make sure that we pay our obligations. And it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work to do this day after day. But you got to help us keep the faith and keep working hard, and we'll make it through. One way or another, we'll make it through this pandemic, and we'll get back to where we were at, and then and go beyond and improve even more. So I wanted to share that with everybody because I'm constantly hearing, questions about, or comments, and negative and otherwise, about, where's the money, and federal government gave the tribe money. Well, the bottom line is the federal government gave us some money, but it doesn't even come close to equating what we lost because of a pandemic that we didn't cause. And everybody needs to understand that, please. Also, despite the lack of federal dollars, though, and I mentioned about programmings, we still got out the elders $2,000 payment. We prioritized that and said, they need it, and we need to get that out. So in July, latter part of July, we got the payments out. Each elder received $2,000 as we committed to in the budget. But also, a lot of people are now asking, well, where is the general fund, or what we call the general welfare distribution? Where is that at? We typically give that out in August. And so what we're going to do by discussion, haven't finalized it, is we're going to wait for our People's Fund, where the majority of this payment will come from. The interest earnings that we have in the People's Fund maintained down in Albuquerque, OTFM, what we're going to do is we're going to wait for one more month so that that interest that we have built, the principal that we built in the trust fund, the People's Fund, will give us a little bit more revenue to be able to make sure that the distribution is covered and goes out. So what that means is we're looking to September, more likely mid-September, to get those interest earnings on board so that we can provide. Got to remember, when we do $1,000 to every one of our members, from the youngest to the oldest, we're approaching $17 million for one distribution. And so we have to allow those interest earnings to earn and to cover that so that we can get that out. We're going to try our best to go a little earlier than that, but the reality is that's what we're waiting for. But it is coming. We are committed to it. Our tribal council, administration, we are going to get the distribution out, but it will be September, as I stated, it will be. So that being said, we also have, and I know I've taken up long, longer than I really want. Our typical elections we have every 2 years. We have an election to fill 3 seats on the council. 2 years later from this time, you'll have another election for the other 4 positions if the council remains as it is. The thing is I want a lot of people to say prayers. I want positive thoughts out there, because right now, as we all know, every time a tribal election nears, and it's going to be made more, more intense, I guess is the word I'll use, because of what's going on a national level. You got a national election coming up with the President of the United States and other congressional seats. And so the fervor on a national level obviously is going to, relay itself down to our level. And we typically have situations where, people get, unfortunately, it's a good thing to have a democratic process in which we elect our leadership, but a lot of people take this time to, unfortunately, to be very negative, to be very hurtful in what they say. And this is a time for prayers. Pray for people that feel that they have to say things that, that are hurtful, that are untrue, that have no basis to it. I'm not talking about objective dialogue and discussion. I always encourage that. But there are people out there who are saying things that they shouldn't be. And like our elders tell us about being responsible with our own words, whether they're written on social media or said on a public street or whatever to people. You understand that we have to be responsible when you choose your words. Choose your words wisely. We're told by our elders that, words are powerful. And then once you say something, you can't take that back. You have said it. Our elders, as I was raised, and many of you have been raised, that's the way we're taught. So you should watch what you say to people. If it's not true or it's hurtful, you should be very careful. But unfortunately, during this time, you see a number of people out there that are very irresponsible, that really don't care. And you have to pray for them, because to me, sometimes those people who are being vicious and hurtful are suffering themselves. And by, pushing their words and their, hatefulness onto others, I think they're trying to resolve things inside themselves. And so if they got problems, then please pray for them. And so that they would choose their words wisely and maybe change how they think. We're all still one people, regardless of our differences. We are the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Rikra Nation, 3 affiliated tribes, and that's who we are. And during a pandemic, especially during a pandemic, we need people to be law-abiding. We need people to be respectful. We need people to be caring. We need people to think about the overall health and welfare of our nation as a whole and as our home, our reservation. And that really means that we need to be cognizant that some of this stuff is not necessary and shouldn't happen, and let people know that it's not acceptable just to say, well, there's an election on, or anything goes, and we'll say and do anything. That just hurts people, and it separates us more, drives us apart, and into the future, it sends the wrong message to our children about the way we are, and that's acceptable, and it's unfortunate that we allow that to happen. And so along those lines, some of you have noticed, and I have, in my administration, done my best to be as candid and open. I know there are people out there that are going to say the opposite and disagree. That's your right to disagree. But at the same time, we have had some recent activity going on and notice. You saw in the media as a result of federal investigations and charges, previous council member and currently one now. Those have occurred. That is true. There is an investigation, and that has led to charges being done. But I want everybody out there to understand that this is part of the system. Part of the system. Our Tribal Business Council, when requested for information, as I have for the past 6 years, but the majority of our council has been very cooperative. Whatever the federal government said, well, we'd like to see documents, we've turned them over. They make a request, subpoena or otherwise, say, can we see data? Well, here's what we have. I will always do that as chairman. I had a statement that was read, statement that we went out on website, and that statement, talks about, the oath of office that I and fellow council members took. About upholding federal and tribal laws, applicable federal and of course tribal law, and also about cooperating with federal agencies and governments that are trying to fulfill their roles. So we're going to continue to do that no matter what. And a lot of people need to understand and recall that. And I came in as chairman very shortly after I became chairman, about four years ago, or thereabouts, 4.5 years ago. For the first time ever, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, came to Fort Berthold for the first time ever, and together we first went on through helicopter. We toured the reservation from above so I could explain the outlays of what was going on with oil and gas development and the difficulties of providing law enforcement because we're spread out by the dam and what happened to learn and know. But after we did our helicopter flight, of course, what we did is we had a meeting. Senator Hoven was there, Senator Heitkamp, Attorney General of the state of North Dakota. There were a number of officials that were there, Bureau of Indian Affairs and otherwise. And the focus of the meeting was crime prevention, was the federal government doing its job to enforce federal law and federal crime and things of that nature. And so that was the focus. And, I pushed hard at that time to say it's good that we address domestic violence and what's going on now. You see today murdered and missing women. You see that. But also we commended them at the time about drugs. We commended them about trying their best to eradicate the sale of illegal drugs impacting our reservation. But I also made the plea at that time that the United States government step it up, and that they start doing their job and helping fight against white collar crime. About things that have in the past occurred to our reservation and may be still ongoing today. And that's the plea that I made as chairman, and with the support of the council, we have done, in fact, these last 3 years now, when we came across the information, we have conducted numerous forensic audits. And when we get the results of those forensic audits, it appears that there might be potential wrongdoing by any official, any tribal member, any department, any employee, or anybody that is none of those that lives on or resides on a reservation. We have done our best, to make sure that we abide by what's required here. And so, when we get data and information, be it from a forensic audit or from others, and we see that and we understand that there might be potential liability or criminal misdoing, we turn that over, and we'll always do that. And we also, responsibly created for the first time since it was approved in 2007 an ethics ordinance, an ethics commission, and an ethics office. So that still exists today. And that didn't come into being until about a year ago, not quite a year ago. We were able to actually make it viable, make it a reality. And we finished up some of the procedural things that needed to be done, but that's now in place as well. So a viable ethics ordinance that exists, and people which they can properly file claims with merits against individuals that they think may have violated our ethics ordinance. So I want to remind people that we continue to do that as well. And so it's important that despite everything that's going on, that it's understood that our Tribal Business Council and the majority of the Tribal Business Council has been cooperative with the federal government in their investigations at every level. And if you go back far enough, you understand that that's what we called for, is for the federal government to do their job. But you also have to understand that the judicial system, federal or otherwise, is a process. And in that process, we have to respect that process and understand that, that as it is in America, this is one of your rights as a citizen, as a member of this nation as well, too, that you are innocent until proven guilty. There is a process involved that requires to remove doubt about whether somebody did something wrong. And I want to remind everybody that there is a process that needs to be respected, and people have rights within that process. But I also want to say this, is that basis that I just said a few minutes ago, if through that process it's shown that through the federal investigation and federal judicial process, or tribal one for that matter, that there's wrongdoing has occurred by the evidence provided and, criminally, that wrongdoing has occurred, that is our responsibility as a government to make sure that the process is carried out so that people are held accountable for their wrongdoing. And that's what we will do. And so that's what we have to do, be it today or 10 years ago or a few years ago. Turn it over and require it, and the federal government does their job. And if the process shows that there's wrongdoing, it will be addressed. It will be adhered to. And that's what's really critical here during this time. I know it's hard. Say prayers again. And there's a lot of things being said, and a lot of, accusations being made, and fervor arising with social media. And I'm not a big fan of that, but that's what's occurring. But I need people to be responsible, and people to understand what's going on here with that as well, too. And so with that, I thank you for listening to me. I know it's been a few weeks. I did have to take a break here, and took about a week off, first time in, like I said, 6 years. And took a whole week off. I still have my cell phone, and of course had to answer and adjust things and make calls while I tried to vacation and, camp and things of that nature. But that's the nature of my job, and I have to do, be responsive no matter what time of day, no matter what day it is, no matter what week it is, to do my job as well. And so we're going to continue to do that as well, too. So that being said, I want to share with you, as I typically do, first, again, ask for all of you to say prayers and, understand that, there are great people in need. There's a lot of people suffering. So say your prayers, and also say prayers for people to put goodness in their hearts at this time, so that it doesn't divide us and separate us further, the things that go on. We all need help. We have people that pass on, and families and relatives that need to be strong, and things of that nature. Difficult times this pandemic has caused upon us. This is the last time to be more divided and to be more, angry or hateful to one another. Try your best not to do that, please. And so, what I've done in the past, and I'm going to change up and throw a little curve here a little bit, is I've always read a scripture from the Bible, but today, I'm going to read this, the lyrics from a church hymn. And I want to share this with you. It's not very long, and most of you, I know all my elders out there certainly remember this song. This song was one of my mother's favorite songs, if not her favorite song. It was her favorite gospel song, and when she passed away, my mother did, we had made sure that this song was sung at her funeral. I wanted to, in her honor today, just to share the lyrics from this song, and to also wish her a happy birthday. My mother's birthday is today. My mother would have been 90 years old, for those out there that remember my mother and who she was. And thank you for any good thoughts. But I want to read this in her honor. Happy birthday to my mom in heaven here. And here it is. The name of the song is Where the Roses Never Fade. And it goes as follows. I am going to a city where the streets are golden laid, where the tree of life is blooming and the roses never fade. Here they bloom but for a season. Soon their beauty is decayed. But I am going to a city where the rose is made. In this world we have our troubles, Satan's snares we must evade. We will free from all temptation where the roses never fade. Loved ones gone to be with Jesus in their robes of white array. They are waiting for my coming where the roses never fade. Here they bloom but for a season. Soon their beauty is decayed. But I am going to a city where the roses never fade. So thank you for listening to me today. Happy birthday, Mom. And everybody else out there, say your prayers. We'll do our best to get information out to you. We'll keep working hard.
Jam it. You're doing a good job. Keep it up. I'm going to turn it up.
KMHA, I love how you guys take music requests.
I listen all the time.
You're listening to the MHA Nation's KMHA 91.3 FM Newtown.
Thank you for joining us this evening for the chairman's address. I believe that was earlier today, and went ahead and played it again at 8 o'clock. I think it may be playing again later this week. I will definitely check on that for you, but for now, let's go ahead and kick it with some good music from Kid Rock. Only God Knows Why.